Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Ronen Slavin, and I'm the CTO and co founder of Cycode. The conversation around AI and security is full of high level theory, but the reality is here. We are moving into an era where AI models can scan and identify vulnerabilities at machine speed. But simply having access to a model is only half the battle. The true competitive advantage isn't the AI model itself, it's the architectural harness and the real world engineering infrastructure you build around it. Today's fireside chat is about moving past the headlines. We're going to look at what happens when frontier AI models change the threat landscape and how to navigate the new risk reality in a massive enterprise environment. I'm thrilled to be joined by Omar Santos, distinguished engineer at Cisco. Omar has been hands-on with frontier AI models inside Project Glasswings for months, exploring exactly how these capabilities impact both offense and defense. Omar, it's great to have you here.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Let's get into it. So, for everyone who hasn't been tracking, Mythos is the frontier model that is so good at finding vulnerabilities that actually Anthropic kept it restricted to a small set of vetted partners. Cisco was one of them. So, let's start there. So, Omar, as a Glasswing partner, you've had access to Mythos and frontier models for months. So, give us the insider view, what it's like to work with an S frontier model from a cybersecurity perspective. And was there a moment where you thought, okay, this is really different?
Yeah, so once again, thank you for having me here today. And I have been very honored to be the main engineer, working with Anthropic at Cisco, but we have a big team at Cisco. We call it the Advanced Security Initiatives Group. Is our offensive security team that has been working nonstop, including weekends for the last few months, not only to find and fix vulnerabilities, but also just like you started, it's not about the model, it's about actually getting the proper harnesses in place and also working with engineering to migrate from this whack-a-mole of finding and fixing on more into eliminating structural risk. And we can talk about that a little bit later. But yeah, how it has been in the last few months has been transformational. Just to put into perspective, the days on the age of where you hire a pen tester and you you know hire them to do an assessment of your systems and your applications twice a year or once a year, those days are gone,
Yeah.
right? Typically what you see is people that will hire that, they will put the risk in a risk registry, and then they will open tickets for a human to then remediate, and it may take days, weeks, months. And now with the power of the technology, and it's not about just Mythos and Fable and and GPT Cyber, but it's just that the chasm of the technology is improving. This is the chasm of the technology improving so much.
Yeah.
We're definitely not only in the exponential on the model, but everything around the model is actually getting better as well. So a lot of people ask me, is this hype or reality? Is this a marketing campaign or not? Is very real. If it wasn't real, you would not see even some of the conversations, including governments and so on. But I
Yeah.
think that I'm optimistic too that we now have the technology to actually flip the table and also find vulnerabilities and and re-architect systems in a different pace.
Yeah. So kind of to be more proactive on this new front. So you pointed these frontier AI models at kind of a cyber task, and you see what it can do at speed. Like you just mentioned it, like we're not going to do pen test every once a quarter. Like there's something that can do it automatically for us. And our audience obviously is security practitioners. So putting the scary headlines aside, what should defenders actually understand about what is changed in today's kind of vulnerability space?
Yeah, a lot of people and I see headlines that says new classes of vulnerabilities has been found, or vulnerabilities that even humans cannot comprehend has been found. That is hype. That is absolutely not true. It's the same types of vulnerabilities, just the speed and the coverage is just incredible. So let me give you some real life examples. So yes, if you have a web application, you're probably gonna find a lot more cross-site scripting, cross-site request forgery, server-side request forgery, SQL injection. The list goes on and on. And not only because that's part of the training data that those models were trained on. But the technology itself, right, it hasn't completely changed just because one model was introduced, right? However, what I'm actually seeing firsthand is not only the speed but the accuracy of the findings is getting better.
Yeah.
You're still gonna get a lot of false positive with things like the traditional, you toss a repo to a model and then find me vulnerabilities. You're gonna get that, but if you truly introduce determinism into the mix, if you also interact with a live system and you put the model or your harness to look at all the findings as context, and then they actually can put those vulnerabilities and chain them together, that is something that no human at that speed can actually do. Uh, so that's another element. And it's not only about software; we're also finding hardware vulnerabilities, including. And whenever I say hardware, different types of architectural enhancements that we can put in hardware using these type of models as well. Like, for example, giving schematics and giving additional information about hardware.
Yeah, so eventually, like the reasoning enables it to kind of reason better on vulnerabilities. I think what we're seeing is that you also don't need to have like the most advanced models for it, right? Like you can use all kinds of simpler models that also catch up with the state of the art. Even this week we had like a new open source model that is really good at cybersecurity. And kind of the uncomfortable part is that attackers have access to this technology, an effective way to discover and exploit vulnerabilities. Right? It didn't exist a few years ago. And with the frontier models, the AI labs try to give security teams kind of a head start. But again, like it's not the most important thing using the frontier one. It's also about what do you do with it and how do you use it and how do you, like you mentioned, introduce determinism and introduce like ways to fine tune the output that it generates. So if kind of AI models become like just another tool, another detection tools, what remains the scarce resource? What are the fundamentals that hold no matter which AI model or detection technique is identifying the risk?
Yeah, actually, let me start with something that is so important that you just mentioned. Again, the people call it the Mythos moment because, of course, Mythos was kind of the chasm of it. But the technology is evolving not because of one model. Open weight models now can do amazing things related to coding, cybersecurity, and other tasks. And I say, just to put a number out there, that the frontier AI labs are probably like 9 months ahead
Yeah,
of open weight. But you don't need an excavator to plant a little flower in your garden, right? So in some cases what people do is they try to actually get that excavator, make a bigger hole, and now you have to hire somebody to fix that hole because the excavator made it too big for a small plant. So the same type of analogy can be used in some of these elements, right? So if you think about using an AI model that you can fine tune, that is amazing for finding SQL injection. Well, while use the bigger model that is super expensive to actually run that task, and especially at scale. At any given company like the size of ours, we have over 400,000 GitHub repositories.
yeah,
So if you are thinking about, just sending a zero-shot prompt to say, find me all the vulnerabilities in there, and then let agents to actually think for 3, 4, 5 days, which is the reason that we have this going, it is not cheap.
yeah,
It is absolutely not cheap. Plus, then you actually gonna get a lot of results that you have to deduplicate, that you have to, assess, that you have to prioritize, that you have to even think about what the remediation will look like. So let's say even if you accelerate the remediation, which by the way, we don't use Mythos for the remediation side. We use things like Codex and other implementations that we have. But that's also very costly.
yeah,
So in that case, you actually do have to have a balance. Now we are testing all products at Cisco That's a given. We're not gonna just for all the supported products that we have, we're definitely testing it. So it's a really, really investment. But just to for the audience to think about whenever you say, "Hey, find me vulnerabilities into all my products." If you are probably a small company that has one product, one code base, that's pretty attainable. If you're an organization that again has 300, 400,000 GitHub repositories with different products, and I'm talking about just public products, then you have your IT applications and so on.
Yeah.
It can be very, very expensive. So having a really good model selection for the task is what most engineers will probably excel or get promoted because of, right? If you have a really amazing balance between picking the right model for the right task with the right tool, that is an amazing value add that any company can have, especially nowadays since people are talking about token economics, right?
Yeah.
Tokenomics. Yeah.
So I want to double click on this because I think it's important for our audience as well. Like it's very tempting to think, I just need Mythos and it will find all the vulnerabilities and that's it. Like I'm done. But like you just called out, like it's not the case. There's much more that is needed. So for leaders that are tempted to think about it, can you share more? You share a bit, but what is the actual stack that you're using, or what are the things that they should think about when they build the program?
Yeah. So as a matter of fact, and I know that people will think, oh, this may be rehearsed. Actually, it's completely not rehearsed. But let me actually give you some elements. We are actually using Cycode right now as the system of record, and it's because of that. It's not about just finding the vulnerability. It's not just about plug into a GitHub repository. It's everything around it. Can I look at trends? Can I get the context as a whole? Can I do the remediation and do a pull request on the fly for a given issue that I'm finding? And then the thing is the motion that we're running Mythos still somewhat of a point in time, whether it's a human or an AI agent or 200 agents. You're actually sending these non-deterministic environments to actually find vulnerabilities, and then let's say you spend $100 million finding all the vulnerabilities in June of 2026.
Yeah.
And comes October, there's more code. So what is going to be the continuous assessment that you're going to be doing, and having a balance that doesn't cost you let's say $1 trillion to actually do that, right?
Yeah.
And that's where we actually are significantly taking advantage of Cycode right now, right? And where now you can have basically AI models and AI agents, but have the remediation part, have accurate and authoritative SBOMs, right? So software bill of materials, for those of you that are not familiar with that concept, or even crypto bombs, all these elements is the beauty of actually having a platform like this. The second one is we are a very large organization that we grow through acquisitions, right? So if you think about it, Cisco is a whole bunch of different many companies inside, but now we're lucky that Jitu Patel, our president, actually he owns all products, so there's a lot of more synergy. But regardless of that, all engineering teams will have their preference on the tool that they use for that task. So one of the beauties of actually using a platform like this is actually for having them to provide the output of tools that they may be running. They may create an agent that is using GPT and Codex and so on, and then another maybe actually using Claude with X, Y, and Z agents, and then the ability for you to actually bring that into a common platform that you can see the true posture, no pun intended, of your environment, your applications. That's the way to move forward, right? And then the other one is actually bringing determinism, right?
Yeah.
Bringing things that you don't need an agent to actually tell you exactly the same thing that probably a really strong static analysis, finding is already telling you, right?
Yeah.
You're burying tokens for knowing the same thing that you already knew from the beginning.
Yeah. So obviously, like I wanted 100% agree. And again, like we also like to us, it's also about having the AI kind of capable of teaching the deterministic engines to be better, and kind of that's some of the things that we work together. But yeah, obviously it's about like the right tool at the right time, factoring complexity of tasks, the outputs that you get, the token economics that we just mentioned, and how all of this plays together. I want to touch also an open source project that you released called Foundry Security. So I know that you are among the leaders of it, and it's built on the conviction you and Cisco share. And Foundry kind of focuses on the fact that it's not really the model itself; it's the harness that you use with it. Um, so again, like you contributed it to the industry, so obviously other practitioners can utilize it as well, and kind of build off of that. So being among the people who developed it, what would security leaders in the room with us should take from Foundry?
Yeah. So as soon as we went public with Glasswing, a lot of customers started actually, pinging us and asking, "Hey, how are you using it? Is it hype versus reality? Is there any recommendations that I actually can do, or can you veg for me to get access to Mythos?" I mean, the conversations were all over the place, but the the common denominator was, "Can you tell me a little bit more into the harness that you're using to find the vulnerabilities?" Even other Glasswing participants, and I cannot talk about the project itself or other participants, etc. But generically speaking, there has been several that have come to us saying, "Hey, but I'm not finding as much as you are, but can you tell me a little bit more about it?" Well, what we decided is like, since these are also customers, well, let's open source most of what we're actually using in the harness, but not just give the code, because that's pretty Cisco specific. It's going to be very boring, to be honest, if I just put the harness out there. But what we did is we put a spec that has 130 functional requirements, 8 agent roles, and 5 extensions with a self-improving loop. And what that means is that now you can customize it, and it will actually ask you as you run it. So if you're not familiar with GitHub Spec Kit, it's basically a way for you to create a PRD, a specification for, and whenever I say PRD, product requirements document, for an AI agent to actually do something, to create a web application, to create a weather application, to create a robot, whatever you want to actually do. In our case, is actually to build the full infrastructure on not only taking a model and throwing it to a GitHub repo to find vulnerabilities, but actually the orchestration agents, the threat modeling. We didn't put the remediation in there, agents, but we put it in the reporter that actually creates another spec for remediation, because it varies at Cisco too. But yeah, it's a pretty impressive infrastructure that the team actually had before Mythos. That was one of the beauties. I say that I'm spoiled because, one, we have an amazing team. Is about 83 people inside of the company that are the offensive security team, and they already had this in place. And second, it's really easy for us to change the model, like swipe the model, right? So it's a model agnostic environment that you're not attached to a specific vendor as far as the model provider, and also that you can extend it. So we have customers now that are actually running it, and some are pretty big banks in the US. Other ones are academic institutions as well. As a matter of fact, they actually took it to expand it over, and now they're even creating courseware for how to actually build this. It's amazing how just literally 3 months, how many things actually have been created. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's super important contribution, because also us playing with kind of AI scanning, you get to experience questions that, like, it's kind of a bit different to answer. So like if you miss a finding, why did AI miss it? Or if it found it before and now it missed it, so how do we get this transparency? So suddenly everything becomes a bit different. Like we talked before, there's lots of potential, but also you need to think about it a bit differently. So I think like Foundry is for people who don't have kind of the infrastructure that you've described. So it's a really good way to start with it and kind of use your institutional knowledge to understand, okay, like what are the edge cases I need to know, and kind of like what are the places to take extra care when we're building this type of technology. I guess like if you can share maybe a bit more. So where do you see this go over the next couple of years?
Yeah, I think that a couple of things. My dream and then probably reality, right? My dream is that the models are going to get so much better that there will not be vulnerabilities and we can retire. The reality is probably not going to be that. The challenge is that we can absolutely accelerate the finding of security vulnerabilities at a pace that we had never even dreamed of before. Again, not only the model, but the whole technology as a whole. You mentioned very briefly using AI to create and enhance deterministic rules to find things. And I mean, this conversation was not here just 5 years ago. So nobody knows what's gonna happen 5 years from now. Nobody, definitely nobody's gonna know what's gonna happen by the end of next year. It's moving so fast. We can know for a fact is that AI still introduces security vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
So a couple of things that I actually see as trends. How can we proactively make sure that the coding agents and the environment is actually not introducing more vulnerabilities, that then you need more budget for finding those vulnerabilities? So it's a cyclical problem. And there's another open source project that we donated to the Coalition for Secure AI, which I co-lead, called CodeGuard, but I'll put that to the side. The second is if we keep the motion of finding and fixing, finding and fixing, finding and fixing, also organizations have to actually take advantage of these type of platforms to truly eliminate structural risk. If you've seen that most of your vulnerabilities are because of some type of input validation to an API, well, it's probably time to refactor that API, right?
Yeah.
If it is, or you use the technology to actually accelerate it. If you're seeing a lot of legacy code that it doesn't have a lot of memory safety, well, migrate to memory safe languages and then eliminate that structural risk. I think that inevitably organizations will actually have to see that. The other one that is so important and also close to my heart is the end of life and end of support code, products, hardware, everything. It doesn't matter if it's a core router of the internet Cisco creates or a browser plugin that you actually have in your environment. There's a life cycle of products. And what is happening is most organizations don't truly have a really good visibility into how that, what are they running. That's why it's very important to actually have that inventory. And people call it SBOMs and so on. But then the other one is some of the technology, especially I was in the PSER team, so the Product Security Incident Response team before what I do now for most of my career, and I helped a lot of customers, very very large government organizations, banks, you name it, whenever they were under attack. And pretty much, I will call it this way, but I cannot sugarcoat it. It was kind of boring because it was the same types of attacks over and over and over. Very old devices that they're still running, and of course, we all of us would take pride that, oh my God, we created a product that can run for 20, 25 years. Well, but it's still running there. That they don't even have the defenses in place. Nobody has tested or patched this thing for 15 years or more, and it's not because customers that just like to also run it, right? I mean, there's budgets. I mean, it's a pretty complicated mess, right?
Yeah.
So I think that if you compound that, it's a compounding effect. In the next year, if we truly embrace the technology, if we embrace platforms that can give you visibility, if you embrace in the way that you can eliminate structural risk by just retiring, the technology that should not be running in your environment, and then having trusted repos and lightweight base images and so on. I think that we can be in a different place next year that has a little bit of advantage to the defenders. Right? If we miss that, we will significantly miss this opportunity, and we're going to be so behind from the attackers that is unmanageable.
Yeah, so I'll join like the optimistic view that you have, and kind of hope that we as a security practitioner will adopt it so that we eventually move to a safer era. I'll also to our viewers, I would also recommend looking at the Code Guard, like Omar mentioned. We don't have time to get into it now, but for those looking at instructing agents on how to write secure code, Code Guard is a great starting point. So please have a look. Omar, we got to our time limit, so I'll wrap up. The conversation makes it clear that solving the AI security challenges is not just using the latest model. We need AI tools at our disposal that strengthen the security against the AI-powered attackers, like we mentioned just now. And like you mentioned, Omar, the fundamentals don't go away. The real premium shift to context, ownership, and the ability to remediate at speed. And the organization that win the race are the ones building a robust model-agnostic harnesses that feed verifiable context to their agents. So Omar, thank you so much for joining me in this session. It was great talking with you as always, and kind of you pulling the curtain and sharing from your experience with Mythos and the other models that you're playing with. So thank you so much, and with that, I will hand it back to Monica to close out the event. So Monica, back to you.